welcome again. I'm going to continue talking a little bit about our mission, but in particular, the practices that enable us to realize our mission. It's important. It's an unusual phrasing we use, that we provide education for becoming. It's not typical, but it's distinctive, and I think it's very important that all the families understand what we mean by that. Just as it's important our teachers are all on board for the same thing. When we say education for becoming, to draw some distinction, generally, when we think of education, historically, in America at least, there's bodies of information, and children go from grade level to grade level, course to course, and by means of lecture, by means of textbook, by means of various other materials, we want to take those bodies of information and put them into children. And then the assumption is via tests, via quizzes, via standardized tests, we will be able to determine whether or not they know those things. And that accumulation of knowledge is what prepares them for their future. But the fact of the matter is that form of education, thinking we can put information into children, a top-down approach. There's so much research to say so little is retained. The best and the brightest make it through and they get something out of it. But in general, the actual learning that students do is very minimal. And you can look back on your own career, the things that you prepared strenuously to get good grades or to pass from one level to another level, from one level of schooling to another level of schooling, all that information you needed to pass a test, for the most part, it disappears. Most of what you learn is on the job, specific to the kinds of tasks that you need to do. And that's fine. I mean, we run a great country with an education like that to some extent, but it doesn't enrich the lives of the people who pass through it, and to the extent it can be enriched. So education for becoming sort of turns that paradigm around. And it says there's subject matter, math, reading, writing, the social studies, the sciences, that have ways of thinking, that have patterns of thought, habits of mind, ways to approach the world that are embedded in content that has been passed down from generation to generation. To what end? For a rich and full human life. And it's that kind of thinking, that kind of observation of the world that we want to bring children into. Yes, there's still content to learn. If you're in mathematics, you've got to learn your multiplication tables and your division tables, and you have to learn computational skills. But ultimately, what are you doing? You're solving problems. Wow. And no matter how able you are in math, if I can give you problems to solve that are at a level where you have the background, it's a joy. It's a joy to solve mathematics. And some people say, math, are you kidding me? No, it's a joy. And the same thing is with reading. We don't teach reading just so you know phonics and you have comprehension skills and you know how to understand a theme. But we bring children into the experience of reading so that they become lifelong readers. It becomes something of who they are. They become more than just knowing how to read. They become readers. And of course, that then lays the groundwork for a rich and full life. It's the same thing in studying history. We learn history not merely to know the names and the dates. That certainly is a part of it, or the geography, that's a part of it. But more importantly, the historian has collected data and they've looked at events in history and the people in history and how they interacted and what there is to learn from events of history that can benefit the life that we live today. That is the essence of studying history, not just a matter of learning dates and states and capitals of states and capitals of countries. And in that kind of education, children are becoming. They're giving the equipping to live a richer, fuller life and to live a life that has lifelong learning to it. So there's no end to your becoming. There's no end to your growth, to your thriving, to your flourishing. That's our goal when we have all of our classes. Now, it's beautiful. I think it's beautiful to be able to say we want children to live this kind of a becoming life. But you can also come back at me, say, well, okay, I like your theory, I like your philosophy. Okay, how do you make it happen? And this is where the rubber hits the road. What are the practices that enable us to have children have these experiences so that when they head off to high school, we only have them up through the 8th grade, they're just approaching life with such a positive attitude. What can I do? What can I learn? Who can I become? Not how do I escape schooling to do whatever recreational thing I want. Not that we're against anything recreational, but not to be the center of your life, to make fun the center of your life. That's a loss in the kind of life that you live. And instead, to enter the high school years thinking, what can I do? What can I accomplish? What can I experience? This is just a time to grow and expand our horizons and to nourish our soul into a richer and fuller purpose. To a great extent, I feel we do that at Birchwood. I look at my graduating 8th graders. I love them just to see their attitude toward life. Well, it comes back to that question. It's a beautiful theory. It's a beautiful philosophy. How do you make it happen? And that's the crux of what we've done at Birchwood for 40 years now, is to consider, okay, what are the experiences in school, month after month, year after year, that builds habits, builds attitudes, builds outlooks that helps children come into a becoming life, the growing, the thriving, the flourishing, because they've had experiences that create those attitudes and those habits to become a lifelong learner and have such a positive attitude toward life. So in the last 40 years, we've taken this seriously. Certainly don't want to talk about a becoming life and go on and on about how beautiful it is. I don't put handles on it. How do you make it happen, Mr. Debelak? How do you make it happen? So that has been our study in history, educational history, in educational research, in the science behind how the mind learns, studying the development of character in children, how that goes along with and is necessary for the development of these attitudes about life. How do you make it happen? So we've kind of narrowed it down to a few core practices: success cycle, natural learning model, Aristotelian character education, how we practice our culture. And there's lots of subpoints in that as well. But those practices go across the board from preschool all the way through 8th grade. And so the children are in an environment, and I'm going to explain this in subsequent videos. What are these practices? But year after year, the same kind of practices within subject area, according to grade level, to shape that attitude toward life, that attitude of becoming, wanting to become, wanting to grow, wanting to be more. I mean, if someone were to ask me, where do you see this going? I just wish every child who went through this school, somehow I could greet them when they were 40 or 50 years old, and they tell me, Mr. D, I am still growing. I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm trying this. I've expanded my friendships. I've expanded my social circle. I'm a contributor to the world. That's our aspiration. And to a great extent, through the practices that we put in place, we cultivate that. At least we go through age 14, 15 by the time they live here. And of course, those are critical years, these early years of building up those kinds of habits. So in subsequent videos, I'll talk in detail what these practices are. And I think once parents get a handle on what it is that we do, you'll know better even how to cooperate, how to work together, how to enhance whatever it is we do at school so that your sons and your daughters be put on this pathway of becoming who knows what, but the attitude is there, the aspirations, the skills, to enable them to realize who and what they can become. Okay, thank you.